everybody, welcome to this extra episode today.
Hello.
So we've obviously just recorded the episode about Koh Tao, you know, the Death Island, yeah. And I said on there that our missing person of the week, I was going to do it on a separate episode, just because there's a little bit more information than what we normally have. So this isn't, it's not
a full episode.
Yeah, it's not a full episode, but I just wanted to raise some awareness for this little girl. So her name is Oakley Carlson. So Oakley is, or would be, like, as I said, she's missing. We don't know
what's happened to her.
Yeah, so she would be 5 years old, and she's from Oakville, Washington, USA. So she was born to mum Jordan Bowers and dad Andrew Carlson, and she has 3 siblings. So she's got a 9-year-old brother, a 6-year-old sister, and a 2-year-old brother. Unfortunately, her parents were drug users, and when Oakley was about 7 months old, she was placed in foster care with foster parents Eric and Jamie Jo Hiles. Mm-hmm. The 2 older children, they were also placed in foster care with other families, and the younger child hadn't been born yet because she was only 7 months.
Yeah.
So Oakley was with the Hiles for over 2 years, from August 2017 until November 2019, and then she was placed back in the custody of her biological parents Jordan and Andrew.
Okay.
So I think she must have been about 3 by then.
Right.
So whilst Oakley had been with the Hiles, they noticed there were lots of red flags when Oakley came back from a visit with her biological parents. I think it was maybe to do with her behaviour and things like that. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was enough to call the Child Protective Services.
Right, okay.
And like Jamie Jo Hiles, she would tell the CPS, she would tell them her concerns, and they would say they would say that they would investigate it, but it doesn't look like they did because, we're here with a missing child. So
exactly, and she ended up back in the biological parents' custody.
Well, even after Oakley went back to Jordan and Andrew, Jamie Jo would hear things that gave her cause for concern. So again, she would call CPS.
Yeah.
But there was never any resolution to it, and Oakley going missing could have totally been avoided because
she should never have been back with her parents by the signs of it anyway.
Well, her foster parents, they loved her, and they brought her up since she was 7 months old, and according to Oakley as well. I mean, like, she will have known them as her parents, really, because from 7 months till like she was 3 years old, that's all she would know. So our foster parents, they went to every court hearing and they fought to keep her.
Right.
Eric Hiles said, quote, "They made a mistake, a big mistake. I told them in my last letter it was going to be on their shoulders if something happens to her," end quote. So they even had a feeling that something might happen to her.
Oh, that's horrible to think.
To think that
they thought that, and they tried so hard to keep her, and it was unsuccessful, and now she's gone missing. I bet they're like, well, we told you so.
Well, exactly. The systems, what's the word? The systems failed them, failed Oakley.
Yeah.
So the Hiles told CPS several times that it wasn't a safe decision, and they begged them not to send her back to their biological parents. Mm-hmm. So we don't know exactly when Oakley went missing because her parents didn't report her missing.
Right.
And it was actually somebody else who noticed she hadn't been seen for a while. Mm-hmm. The authorities became involved on the 5th of December 2021 when Oakville Elementary School principal Jessica Swift contacted the Grays Harbor County Sheriff's Office with concerns about Oakley's safety. Mm-hmm. So on the 6th of November 2021, there had actually been a fire at the Carlsons' house, and because of the damage, the family moved to a hotel, while the house was getting fixed up again. So the family hadn't actually called the fire department, and they said the reason for this was because they couldn't find their mobile phones. Now, before you mention neighbours, they actually live in a 300-acre property, right. So there's not like neighbours like right next door or anything. Door, okay. At some point, Andrew Carlson did call 911. And he told the dispatcher that the fire had been started by his 4-year-old daughter, Oakley. Mm-hmm. He said that she had been playing with a cigarette lighter and set the couch on fire.
Okay.
Now, if your child, as soon as your child, there shouldn't be a cigarette lighter even in anywhere near a child.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But if you see a child pick one up, you grab it off them straight away. You don't let them sit and play with it.
Well, no, exactly.
So anyway, so she set the couch on fire. The fire had spread, but he managed to put it out himself, which is why he said he didn't need the fire service to come. Mm-hmm. He just thought, because they had a fire, he should really report it. So that's why he'd phoned them later.
Right.
Jordan also told folk that Oakley had started the fire and that it took them 4 hours to put it out.
Really?
So he's kind of... Sounds like he's just brushed it off and said, I put it out myself, it's fine.
Yeah.
But she's saying it took 4 hours. If they couldn't find their mobile phones, why did not one of them run for help? They could have went and jumped in the car and drove to...
Exactly. And to me, if a fire has taken 4 hours to put out, it sounds like quite a big bloody fire.
Yeah.
Whereas he's like, well, no, I did it myself, it was just the couch.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure about that. Anyway, so a fire investigator did come out and look at the house, but he said that the fire started in the microwave, which was obviously in the kitchen, wasn't anywhere near the couch, which was in the living room.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure what that's all about. But, they were drug users, and I don't know if they maybe used the microwave to...
What, cook their drugs?
I don't know. Do you do that?
I don't know, maybe.
I don't know. I don't know. But it just seems weird that why would they not... If it was just a normal accident that happened.
Why would you not sell with my microwave? Because a microwave could catch fire.
Yeah, of course, exactly.
I mean?
So why the cover up?
Yeah, exactly.
And why blame your child?
Well, because they think they'll get away with it.
So even though the family was staying in a hotel, I'm assuming that they must have been going back to the house every day to sort of clean it up and make it livable again, because Jessica Swift, the school principal, she visited the house. Obviously, this is before she'd reported anything. So she visited the house because she'd heard about the fire and she was like taking some supplies because a lot of their stuff had been damaged. So she was just taking them some bits and pieces, checking on them, just to help them out.
Of course.
She saw the other 3 children, but there was no sign of Oakley. So she asked the kids where Oakley was, and they said she was on a timeout.
Right.
She then asked Jordan and Andrew where Oakley was, and they said she was in her room on a timeout in her room. So all right, okay. So Jessica visited again. I'm not sure how many times she visited, but each time she visited, she would see the other kids, but she'd never seen Oakley. And her parents would always have an excuse, for where she was. So Jessica, her daughter was actually friends with Oakley's 6-year-old sister.
Right.
So one day Oakley's sister came over for a sleepover, and Jessica asked, how's Oakley, And the 6-year-old became very upset and said, quote, Oakley is no more.
Wow.
That's
for a 6-year-old.
Yeah, I know, Oakley is no more. And I think that's when Jessica was like, right, okay, I need to
highlight the concern here.
Yeah, so she called the authorities and asked for a welfare check to be done on Oakley.
Yeah.
So, as I said, because they were obviously staying in the hotel, the police went to the hotel where they were staying. So they had to knock twice before eventually Jordan answered the door with the 2-year-old son in her arms. The family were packing up their stuff to move out of the hotel room and back to the home. And the officer asked Jordan where Oakley was. And Jordan said Oakley is with her mum.
But she is her mum.
Yeah. So but then the officer asked her to confirm that she was Oakley's mum, and she went, yes. So that's...
Makes no sense.
Yeah, anyway. So the officer asked again where Oakley was, and she turned to Andrew, who was in the room, and said, Oakley is at your mum and dad's. But I'm not sure if that was like a question, like, is Oakley at your mum and dad's? Or if it was a statement just saying, Oakley's at your mum and dad's. I'm not quite sure. And at first he didn't answer. Andrew came to the door, and the officer asked him where Oakley was, and at first he didn't answer. So he was asked again, and then he said Oakley was with his dad, so her grandfather.
Yeah.
So the officer asked for his dad's phone number, and Andrew said he didn't know it.
Right.
And at first he said he didn't know his dad's address.
Okay.
Now, I understand maybe the phone number if you don't have your phone handy,
but
or,
your child is with your grandparent, you must have dropped off, or...
You should know
you should know that.
Well, no, they could have come picked him up, yeah.
Suppose,
but come on, it's your parents. You should know where your parents live.
Well, yeah, exactly.
But eventually, he was lying anyway. He provided the address. So another officer went to the address and spoke to Andrew's dad, who said no, he didn't have Oakley, and hadn't seen her for about a year.
Oh wow!
So officers, they also phoned CPS just to check that she wasn't in foster care. And they were told, no, she's not in the system, she's not in foster care. She is with, or should be with, her parents. So the officers went back to the hotel and spoke to Jordan and Andrew separately. When they told Andrew that Oakley wasn't with his dad, he obviously didn't look surprised in the slightest. And when they told Jordan that, oh no, Oakley's not with you, with Andrew's dad, she got angry and she told him that she wasn't answering any more questions. When the officers left the hotel, they saw Andrew's car outside and they noted that it only had one child seat, even though they have 4 kids aged between 2 and 9, which is weird. Not that it really says it. I don't know. It's just.
Well, you think they'd have at least 2.
Well,
maybe even 3.
Yeah,
I mean, the 9-year-old might not need a car seat because it very much depends on height
Yeah.
and weight and stuff like that.
I don't know if the laws in America
they might be
anyway,
different as well,
might be
but
different.
you think they would at least have a minimum of 2, probably 3.
Yeah. So that was a bit strange. It was just a side note. The Carlsons went back to their house and the police went as well. Jordan was actually arrested for allegedly obstructing a police officer and was booked into the Grays Harbour County Jail. Andrew was questioned and apparently made statements to the effect of Oakley being dead or not coming back for a reunion.
Okay.
That sounds awful.
That is awful.
So he was also booked into jail that day.
Yeah.
So the family home was searched and there was no evidence to sort of account for Oakley. Like, there was like clothes and toys accounted for the other children but not for her.
Yeah.
So it was like she wasn't there.
No, she wasn't there.
And there was actually blood splatter was found on the blinds near the front door, on the front door, and a handprint was on the wall in the downstairs hallway, which I'm taking to mean there was blood, like a bloody handprint. I'm assuming that's been sort of sent away for DNA. So the other 3 children, because obviously the parents have been put in jail, so the other 3 children, they were safely removed from the house and put into foster care. And the 2 older kids were interviewed, because obviously the youngest one's only 2. So,
yeah, of course.
so that you've got the 6-year-old and the 9-year-old.
Yeah.
So the 6-year-old sister initially said that she didn't have a sister, but then later said Oakley was her sister, but she hadn't seen her in a long time.
Right, okay.
She then went on to say that her mum had told her she wasn't allowed to talk about Oakley, and that her mum had also said that Oakley had gone into the woods and been eaten by wolves.
Oh, okay.
Why would you say that to your daughter?
Oh, I know. Well, that's awful.
And when asked if Oakley was hurt, she didn't respond and she started to cry.
Right, okay.
So, both the 6-year-old and the 9-year-old, they both told police that their parents would sometimes lock Oakley in a closet, they would starve her, and they would also, they also saw their mum beat her with a belt. So it seems, from what they're saying, is that Oakley has been abused, but they haven't.
Yeah, I know, because that's where my thinking was just heading. I'm like, so why was Oakley targeted?
I have no idea.
And not that you want any of them to
No,
be,
of course not.
But why? What's she done that's so wrong?
Well, she's just a baby. And just as a sort of side note, when the police went to the hotel and they knocked on the door and Jordan answered with the 2-year-old, and they said that the 2-year-old looked well nourished, was well dressed, like well presented, no signs of neglect or anything like that.
They're just taking a dislike to Oakley. Like,
I don't know.
Has she been a difficult child for them? Could they not control her, or as in discipline her properly? I mean,
I have no idea.
There's maybe the other ones are more well behaved and she's been a problem, and that's why she has been potentially targeted, I guess.
I mean, but that doesn't. You can't do that.
Well, I know you shouldn't, but that to me, it could happen, I suppose.
Maybe there wasn't a reason.
Or maybe there wasn't a reason, no.
So according to Oakley's parents, the last time they saw their daughter was the 30th of November. So the fire was on was it the 6th of November, I think it was? And the last time they saw her was the 30th of November. But they wouldn't say what had happened to her, and they gave no indication that she was being cared for by an adult, or where she was, nothing.
Right.
Investigators believe that Oakley would be unable to survive on her own for this length of time, as the last credible sighting of her, apart from her parents. So her parents say that the last time they saw her was the 30th of November, but the last credible sighting of her, apart from them, was actually the 10th of February 2021.
Oh, wow.
So we're talking over a year ago now.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And you have to...
So investigators believe that she would be unable to survive for this long. Yeah. So Jordan and Andrew, they were held in custody on suspicion of manslaughter, but they can only be held for 72 hours before either being released or charged, obviously.
Yeah.
So there was no charges filed, so that was kind of closed. But instead, they were actually charged with second-degree abandonment of a dependent person, which is a Class C felony, punishable by up to 5 years in prison and up to $10,000 in fines. But that's not in relation to Oakley. That is from police discovering that her 6-year-old sister had not been receiving her medication.
Okay.
So they had been withholding her medication for 15 months.
Wow.
So the 6-year-old's temporary foster parents, so obviously when they got put in jail, they'd got, I don't know if it was with her other, I don't know if it was the ones that she'd been with before or whatever, but basically the foster parents had contacted the authorities for information on a medication that the child needed.
Mm-hmm.
So the authorities asked Jordan about the medication, and she went, she's not on any meds. But she was.
She should have been.
The 6-year-old was on meds.
Right.
She was initially prescribed the medication in March 2018 when she was in foster care.
Uh-huh.
And it was an injectable growth hormone to prevent future physical impairment. So this is something that she really needs.
Yeah.
And when she was returned to her parents, they were instructed to maintain and administer the child's medication as prescribed. They properly filled the prescriptions.
So they were still getting prescriptions for her?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, so when she said she's not on meds, it's not as if, we didn't know she was on meds. Like,
they were actually getting but not giving it to her.
They were properly filling the prescriptions, and they would take the child to doctor's appointments. Mm. So how she expected the authorities to believe the child wasn't on meds is beyond me. Mm. So on the 10th of January 2022, Jordan Bowers and Andrew Carlson both pled not guilty to the second-degree abandonment of a dependent child, and a joint trial has been scheduled for the 19th of April 2022.
Right. Okay.
So that's basically all we know. Yeah, that's where we're at. So if anybody would like any other information or just want to follow Oakley's case, there's a Facebook group that I joined, and it's called Oakley Carlson Oakville, Washington. And it's like there's like 2 red dots at the start and at the end of the title. So I should be able to link it in the show notes. But if anybody has any problems finding it, just let me know and I can send you in the right direction. Mm-hmm. So I only discovered the group like a couple of days ago. I mean, basically, I only heard about this case 3 days ago. Mm-hmm. It was actually on TikTok, and somebody commented on one of our missing people posts, and saying, could you look into the case of Oakley Carlson? And funnily enough, the same day, somebody else had put a post on our Facebook group saying, has anybody done a podcast on Oakley Carlson? Mm-hmm. And I said, I was going to mention her because I was just going to put her as a missing person, as we usually do, like a couple of minutes just mentioning a missing person. But I didn't realise there was, I didn't realise there was enough information to sort of do an episode on it. So I was referred to the Facebook group. So basically what happened was I joined the Facebook group a couple of days ago, and I put up a post just saying if anybody's got information would like me to know, because I'm going to do the podcast on it. But I didn't, my post, it sort of,
didn't get approved.
Yeah, it didn't get approved. I couldn't find it. So I was like, what's happened here? So I just kind of went ahead and sort of wrote, looked for the information myself and, sort of wrote up the case. And then last night, I actually got a voice note from one of the admin, April, and she sent me some links for information to write up the case. So I kind of had a quick look at those links, and a lot of the information I've sort of got from there anyway. So hopefully, because I've only really put this episode together in like literally a couple of days.
It sounds like you've covered quite a lot. It looks.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping that I've covered everything, but as I said, like if anybody wants it, they can join the Facebook group. I mean, it's got like 10,500 members in the Facebook group, and they have is it a protest award, like sort of where they've got Justice for Oakley and like gatherings and things like that. And I to be honest, I really haven't had a proper chance to look through it all. It seems a very active group, and everybody just wants justice for Oakley. They just want to know what happened to her, and obviously
Because obviously I'm assuming everybody's thinking that they're probably looking for a body rather than actually,
I would think so. I mean, obviously everybody would be hoping that she's alive, but it's not looking great. But I mean, as I said, I mean, everybody just wants to know where she is and what's happened to her. So if anybody does have any information about Oakley, I've just got a contact number which is 360-964-1729, or if you want to remain anonymous, you can call Crime Stoppers on 800 222 8477. So as I said, hopefully I've kind of got the point across anyway.
Yeah, of course.
Hopefully I haven't missed out anything too important to the case. But as I said, there's plenty of stuff online and in the Facebook group if you do want to follow it or find out any information.
Have a good look myself, actually.
Yeah, you should join the group. So I'll put the contact information in the show notes. I'll try and link the Facebook group because I'm kind of quite rubbish with technology. And obviously, we'll put up our missing post and thing on our social media. So if you do see it and if you could, share it and whatnot, just, get her name out there, Oakley Carlson. Let's try and find out what happened to her. So thanks everybody for listening, and
we'll be back next week.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.